We are going live, and this is it's going to be a very impactful webinar that I'm going to be co-hosting with my friend and colleague, Elizabeth Eiss. She's CEO of ResultsResourcing. She's truly one of the brightest women entrepreneurs, tech entrepreneurs that I've ever met. And Elizabeth and I collaborated with a group of people on a concept called ShiftCo. And so we're co-investors in that, and friends and colleagues, and we love to bounce back and forth on industry analysis and how it's going to affect entrepreneurs. And so, Elizabeth, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, that's a great introduction, Terri. And Terri and I have done a number of things together, and both serial entrepreneurs, although Terri has many more companies under her belt than I do. But one of the things that we're both interested in is how can we help particularly smaller businesses scale and increase their impact and achieve their purpose, in the world. And that's really kind of the consuming thing between ShiftCo as well as Results Resourcing. And we'll talk more about that later. But we are the freelance platform that marries technology with human recruiters. So we help people get matched with freelancers that can help their business scale.
Awesome. Well, let's jump in. So we're going to first of all set the stage and talk through what's happening in the economy and what we think will happen in the economy. And then what do you do about that? Because it's not a secret that there are some challenges facing us, not just because of some of the industries that we're in, but just because of the uncertainty that faces us. And then Elizabeth and I are going to give you strategies that we are actually deploying in our own businesses. So these are not theories. We're actually, doing some of these strategies that we're recommending on how you can innovate repeatedly, because that's really what you've got to be thinking about. It's not making one change. It's making a series of small pivots and small adjustments as the uncertainty becomes less uncertain, and then someday it'll be a little more clear. So I'm going to start first with the economic update. I follow this and have been following this for a long time. I was fortunate enough to be president of an internet company that did an IPO on the NASDAQ stock exchange. And so we went from this amazing ride and ringing the bell on Wall Street to, about 6 months later, the dot-com bubble bursting, and just watching all of that go away in very short order. So I learned very quickly, as a result of that experience, how to begin to spot trends. And so there's certain data trends that I look at and follow. And so this is one of the ones that I follow from IMF. And they do basically this nice combination of backward looking, forward looking. And so you can see 2019, not so bad. 2020, lots of minus signs. That's obviously not so great. But then you'll see these really nice numbers happening in 2021. Here's another look at what's called a roll-up look. It's a little bit easier on the eyes. And so you can see, the global economy, which is every economy rolled into one, where it was in 2019. You can see where they're projecting to end the year. And then you can see this very nice, bright red rebound. Same thing in the advanced economies like the United States. You can see that they've been hit very, very hard. And so one of the questions you should be asking yourself is why were advanced economies hit harder? That's a very interesting question. And then you can see the emerging markets, places like India. And so the net of this is it's all about 2021. And as you're thinking about making changes, and as Elizabeth and I share with you the structure and the way that we make changes in our business, you're really making changes for 2021. And this rebound, this kind of U-shape effect that you're seeing with these projections is resulting from the fact that we'd had a lot of growth leading into 2019. And then we had this series of horrific things that have happened that have just pulled everything down. And when that happens, companies literally just shut the faucet up. So the manufacturing shuts down, retail stops ordering, and it creates this vacuum of opportunity where when we restart, that everything needs to restart, and we've got to fill the supply chain. We've got to fill the shelves. If you've been in any of the major retail outlets, safely, of course, with your mask, you'll notice that the shelves are very thin. Normally they're packed all the way to the back and all the way to the top. That's not what we're seeing right now. And that's on purpose, as most companies have really ratcheted down, and they're only buying literally what they feel like they need. Even large companies like Target is a customer of mine. They are only buying about 2 weeks worth of inventory, and even their stock rooms are near empty. So that's going to really help in 2021. So just kind of file that in your brain. It's all about 2021, and any of the changes you're thinking about making, you want to make them with an eye toward surviving now, because all of our businesses have been impacted, but also preparing for the future. The second thing I wanted to share with you is just I follow stock market trends differently than most people. I look at them in terms of opportunities. And one of the things that I've been watching very closely in this current free fall that the markets went in is I haven't seen the double dip. In almost every major recession, there's this double dip that occurs, and you can kind of see a couple of these being pronounced where, oh, it looks like it's not so bad, and then it drops even further, and then it comes back up. And so we haven't seen that second dip in this particular scenario. And what I believe is going to happen, and Goldman Sachs is projecting this as well, is that stocks will tumble in the next 3 months. And what that's going to do is kind of further shock things. But again, keep your eye on where the opportunity is, because it's all about 2021. And so the expectation is it is going to get a little bit worse. And I don't like to shy away from the bad news. That is absolutely going to happen. And the stock market is going to come down, but it is going to rebound. And that's where we really want to talk about both where the opportunity is, but also some things to keep an eye on. And so these are the market risks that we should all be paying attention to. Obviously, COVID infections, we can't miss that. And we're all trying to stay safe. Many of us have already been impacted by that. But that's something that's a big uncertainty. And we don't know what's going to happen with sports. We don't know what's going to happen with school. And we don't know exactly what that means for a lot of industries. So that's a given. The second thing is, how long is the reboot going to take? And in particular, in the area of jobs, there is a direct correlation between the unemployment rate and how much people spend. Makes perfect sense. And so how long does it take for the job market to come back? That's going to be a data point you're going to want to watch. If that takes a lot longer, then that means that 2021 is just going to start pushing out that U-shaped recovery, because we need the jobs to come back for people to feel comfortable for consumers to spend. So that's a very interesting one to watch. The other one that I've been following for about 5 years that I've been concerned about is what are called loan loss reserves. And this is basically, I'm going to give you a simple analogy. If you own a home and your home is upside down, or you own a car and your car is upside down, which means you owe more on it than it's actually worth, then you have what's called a loan loss reserve issue. That means that if for any reason you wrecked that car or your house burned down, when something horrible happened, you don't have enough asset preservation to protect that debt. So that's a very concerning area. Is there are a lot of companies that are carrying a lot of debt on their balance sheet. Our government is carrying a lot of debt. Now all of the other governments are carrying a lot of debt. And that loan loss reserve bucket is really shrinking. And if it crosses over and we go in the red, then credit ratings drop and it creates a lot of issues. So that's one you're going to want to watch as well, because that, again, everything creates challenges and creates opportunities, but that's one you're going to want to watch. Slash dividends also means that people have less money to spend. That's the first place that everyone cuts their dividends. But that means that wealthier individuals who own those stocks have less money to spend. The 2020 U.S. election, for those of us in the United States, how's that going to fare? And then just the international tensions that are out there. So all of these are risks. These are the big six that, you know, we should be following, and not so much from, you know, what if downing, but more from the standpoint of where do I need to pivot? And that's what I want to have Elizabeth share with you, is the ways that she and I are thinking about crisis recovery. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the very simple model that I use, and then we're going to tie that together with a really cool model that Elizabeth has. And we're going to talk about how do you actually make changes with this much uncertainty. It feels like there's just so many things that are uncertain. So what do you do? So this is the model that I use. So when a crisis hits, we go through very, very distinct stages as humans. The first stage is we try to stabilize. So the human psyche always tries to seek stasis. So triage, assess, learn, triage, assess, learn. And we've been doing that. And then we're in phase 2 is when people start to focus and act. And normally by this point, we would have come out of phase 2 and we would have gone into phase 3 where we would have begun to recover. The problem is we haven't come out of phase 2 yet. And the reason for that is because there's still too much uncertainty. And what I see a lot of business owners doing is they move into phase 2 and they try to focus and they try to act, and then something else happens, and then they go back into stabilize. And so one of the pieces of advice that we're going to give you is try to stay in phase 2 and not so much think you have to start over, but try to look for these small pivots that we're going to be talking about, these opportunities of innovation, of where you can just make smaller pivots and not go back and think you have to triage, assess, learn, but that you're almost like preparing for the unexpected so that you can move through phase 2 and then into phase 3. My goal in our portfolio is that we are completely through phase 2 and we're into phase 3 by September, October, so that we're integrating the benefits. We understand the markets that we want to serve. We've made the adjustments that we want to make. And so the question really is, how do you do that? And so as part of that, I'm a natural innovator, and I think that's why Elizabeth and I hit it off so well. Because for us, winning looks like innovation. Like every change that happens is always an opportunity to innovate. And so I want to bring Elizabeth up and have you share a little bit about some of the methods that you use, and then we'll get into very specific actionable strategies that you can deploy. So Elizabeth?
Great. Well, I think Terri said it well. Winning to us, always looks like innovation. And I think that if you can not be in that panic mode about what's going on, because it's not controllable by any one of us, it's just look for the opportunity, but don't make big bets, make small bets. And so with what Terri said before about really focusing on 2021, think about the things you're doing today. While you might want them to have a huge impact on the bottom line this year, I think we all do, the likelihood of that is low given the uncertainty. And so it's more a chance to don't put the pressure on yourself to outperform today. Just think about what can you do to position yourself for 2021, and the small changes you make now will have an impact today as well as tomorrow. So there's a series of things you can think about in terms of rethinking everything. The first is how you grow, what services that you offer. Keep going, Terri. How and where you work, what roles are core to your business and what are non-core work that your company do that you might be able to outsource, and we've got some interesting ideas about that. Generally speaking, you want to be thinking about things that will help you increase your ability to scale and your ability to be a flexible business that can be nimble in changing times. And that's linked to your ability to scale and deal with whatever happens to come in front of you in the coming months. And so I really think this is an opportunity. In a sense, every business is on pause. So it's not like you're going on pause while everyone is going ahead. Everybody's on pause. So it's really a great opportunity to think about how you go to market and think about 2021, not so much July of 2020. So if we can go to the next slide, I came across... Yes, I'm sorry.
Before we do that, I want to talk a little bit more about 1 and 2, because what I find about 1 and 2 is it makes the others that much easier. And I want to give you just a really simple little trick for 1 and 2. Every day I wake up and I say, who am I called to serve? Like who, what is my target market that I love to serve? And what do they need from me right now? And I start that every single day with that question: who am I called to serve, and what do they need from me right now? Like when I say called to serve, to me as a conscious entrepreneur, that means who do I take great joy in serving, and what do they need from me right now? And every single day for 30 minutes a day, I start my day with that question, and I just jot down a couple of ideas. And then as I'm going through the day, I'm looking at those ideas and I'm saying, is this something that I think that I should deploy? And it might be a little idea. It might be a webinar like this, or it might be a podcast or something along those lines. But I start with these little ideas every day and I compile them throughout the week. And then at the end of the week, I have a 1-hour block where I look at those ideas and then I pick one for the next week that I'm going to implement. And so that idea of who am I called to serve and what do they need from me right now will allow you to make little baby pivots that will give you ideas, kind of what if up ideas that will help you grow. And I just wanted to drop that in, Elizabeth, so that we can, start sprinkling in some of those actionable ideas in terms of how do you make small little pivots each day. And then we'll come over to that beefy stuff. So apologies up for jumping in there.
Oh, no, really, really, really good. Because, one of the themes that you'll see throughout this, in a sense, are many wheels, but it's a cycle. It's what are repeatable things that you can do to think about innovating. And I discovered this particular chart a couple of weeks ago. It's put together by Visual Capital, and we gave you the links because they have a lot of other really cool charts as well. But this really just captured this idea that Terri and I have been talking about, is that for the most part, people think about innovation as building something new from scratch, and that's innovation, and anything else is not innovation. And what I like about this chart is it kind of disbands that notion, because there's multiple ways to innovate, particularly in these days of COVID and COVID constraints. And there are also ways to scale your business and to do more. And back on the theme of small adjustments, really there's a way that, and this chart helps you. We're going to talk one more slide about this as well. It helps you think about your business in terms of how, if you look at the center wheel, how is your business configured? Like help you rethink your business model, the network that you have, of your business partners whom you sell to, how do you broaden that network? That might be a source of innovation for you. How you structure your business, because all of a sudden you can't be on site anymore. You've got to think about how you structure your business in a virtual world, or the processes that you follow. Those are all things that are ripe for innovation that maybe you haven't looked at in a while because you were too busy in your existing environment executing your business. And so it's a chance to think about how you configure your business to innovate. The same also with the offering. What is it that you offer to the market? And that could be, how does your product perform? What are the features and things that differentiate what you do? And can you think up some new things, like Terri was saying, about what could you do different that differentiates you, again, thinking towards 2021. And then also the system, your product system. And so there might be complementary packages that you can put together, products and services, or even through partnerships with other people that complement your business, that are a way to expand your offering. If you're brick and mortar, maybe there's someone to partner with that's online. So there's lots of ways to think fresh about the offering that you're putting into the market. And then the last thing, and probably the biggest arena, is experience. And in rethinking, how your customers engage with you. Are there more ways that you can offer value? Like Terri was saying, who do I want to serve and how can I serve them every day? So there might be some things that you can do to augment your customer interactions that is a lifeline for them, that you can offer something of value that they're going to remember you when businesses become more normal again. You might want to rethink how your brand is represented in the marketplace, something new to your website or how you market. A number of things in that area that are ripe. channels. You may not have thought much about, developing partnerships to deliver your product and services through different channels. It's an opportunity to think about that. And I guarantee you those channels are looking for new ideas and new ways, to deliver value to the market too. And then lastly, just kind of your service. How do you provide service? How do you support your clients? Maybe there's a way to do more in that area. So broadly speaking, these are some key areas to help you go through every single one of these pies to think about what this means and rethinking your business from the ground up. And unless Terri has some other thoughts, okay, let's move on to the tactics, because this accompanies, if you go to this link, you'll have the link to this as well, because this takes the 10 different pie slices that I just went through in terms of the profit model, network, product performance, channel, all that kind of stuff. And it talks a little bit about what does it mean. So profit model, how do you make money? Maybe there's some new ways to think about how you can make money to position yourself to 2021. Or that product system, number 6. Are there complementary products and services that you can devise by yourself or in collaboration with others or other channels that can expand your ability to innovate and make money? And the other cool thing is that in that link, there is, and all of you will get a chance to get a copy of this presentation, and you'll be able to click on all this stuff in the future. But if you click on the over 100 tactics, we don't have the slide for that because the slide frankly is too big. But this firm, Dobbins, that worked on this whole project with, I think it was Deloitte and Visual Capital, there are probably 30 ideas that you can explore for each one of these 10. So 10 ideas for profit model, 10 ideas for network. So it really helps you kind of take inventory, and you're not looking at a blank sheet of paper. There's tools here to help you think through the many ways you can innovate, so you can think about positioning yourself for next week, for next month, and ultimately for 2021.
And that activity that we talked about a minute ago, this is like keeping that on your computer and just taking 30 minutes every day, picking through it and picking a couple of ideas, and then look at those throughout the week. At the end of the week, pick one and try to innovate one area of one of these 10 areas each week with these little baby changes, and you'll begin to create this kind of what if up momentum where you're starting to see the opportunity and all the challenge.
Great. So I think what Terri just said, it was a great segue that, really developing a strategy to innovate repeatedly is the key. And, I just wouldn't exclude anything. Anything that helps you improve your business is innovation. It helps you expand what you do, deliver more value, partner with more people. And it's really developing that system or that habit of doing it repeatedly that's so important. And so really the next slide talks about really how easy that is. In my mind, there's 5 steps, and this is really what I do every single day, and I know Terri does too, to innovate and make small pivots. And the first is really, with no judgment, just take stock. And don't think that you have to make it so comprehensive that it's going to take you a month to take stock. Just take an hour and think about your business and take stock about what's working and maybe what's not working, and where you might
own it.
And own it, exactly.
I want to emphasize that don't judge yourself, because that's the thing that really blocks you when you're taking stock. It makes you not want to take stock because you start beating yourself up with the I'm not good enough that. Don't judge yourself. We're all doing the best we can. These are unbelievably difficult times. Just basically say what's working, what's not working. I'm going to focus on what is, and I'm going to begin to ask feedback for what's not, and don't beat yourself up.
Yep. And so, it's like if you do this on a weekly basis, just take stock, what's, relatively speaking, what's working well, what's not working well, where do you think you might, be able to innovate? And then I always like to ask for feedback. There's, I've heard it, kitchen cabinets or, a couple of key clients, a couple of key business partners, go ask them what they think. I got this idea, or let me bounce this off on you, or hey, would you like to partner with me on this? Just be exploratory in your thinking and ask for feedback, because, all of us operate in our own little worlds. And, until you ask for feedback, you don't really You can't think about how it lands on somebody else. It's not so vested in your business. So I think asking for feedback and just being open to it is key. And then taking that feedback and starting to think about improving your processes, because making a one-off change isn't going to be sustainable, but thinking about how you can improve your processes so it becomes part of your system of delivery is really what's going to help you be more nimble in the future and be able to repeatedly add value in a consistent way. And once you've thought about process, then you can start thinking about tools. And I'm sure we all have many tools that we use to run in our business, but use of tools gets that much better if you've thought about the processes that you want to integrate the tools into. And I'm going to talk more about this in a little bit, but I think the proper flow is think about how you delegate to or outsource to processes to you improve your process to deliver more consistently, then invest in tools. And then to me, the last thing is to think about people and what people can help you support, your business. And I call that broadly outsourcing, but that outsourcing might be to a business partner, as well as to staff that you might have hired or to freelancers that you might want to invite in to help you, with specific aspects of your business. But the key is this is a cycle that can be repeated, and you just can change focus from, let me focus this week on my business model. Next week, let me think about the client experience. So you can use this model repeatedly no matter what you want to examine, and it will help you follow a process once a day, once a week, whatever it is that works for you, that will help you make those small pivots so you can build a more sustainable business that will be positioned for 2021 and the future. So let me talk about some of my favorite things. And I am really all about scaling value delivery. That's what my business is all about, and that's something that has been, something that's motivated me for years. And this quote here is actually, I should have attributed it to Peter Drucker, who said it literally 50 or 60 years ago. But Peter Drucker was a leader in management thinking, business thinking, and he said, do what you do best and outsource the rest. And that's really the key to building a scalable business. And to me, it's how do you deliver more value to whomever you want to serve? And to me, it's three things: process, tools, and people. And it's that in that order. So many people jump to people that, oh, that's the way to get bigger or do more. And I would argue it's not, because if you haven't thought about process, if you haven't thought about the tools, then you're probably not going to effectively utilize people to help you scale your business. And so the next few slides talk about that a little bit more.
And one thing I do in this area is I think of core and non-core. And I really think about the things that really touch the customer. I want to keep those as close to me as possible. But if it's truly something that's not necessarily directing or impacting the customer or directly affecting them, those are usually the things that I outsource first.
Yep. Well, and I would like to, at the very top of this slide, talk about this notion of outsourcing. Outsourcing to me includes process, tools, and people, because basically what this slide says, first of all, is how you deliver your value is a business asset. Process is sexy. If you really think about how do I systemize my business so my clients get a consistent, great experience from me, that's process. No matter whether a person's doing it, a tool is doing it, that's really that's a huge business asset that you can claim and build upon, in the future. So to me, building repeatable process is key. You deliver your value consistently, you get more done consistently, you make better decisions on what tools you want to utilize in your business, and it sets the stage for what is core, what is non-core, so you can make decisions about whether you want to delegate to staff or outsource to other businesses to get more done. The next way to scale your value delivery is tools. And I really say tools need to fit your process, because if you haven't thought about your process, then you're frankly going to build your process to work your tools. And that's exactly backwards. You're going to try to figure out how to get things into your CRM. You're going to figure out how to get things into your your marketing campaign tools. And if you really think about the process first, those decisions on tools are going to be more logical, and you're going to get better utilization out of those tools. So tools ultimately save you time and money. They really help you offload repetitive processes to tools, not to people, because tools, are a lower cost, and they're a fixed cost. They're not a variable cost like people are. So really going to process, then to tools is the best formula. And I think is probably an area that's really ripe if you look at that wheel of innovation to rethink your process and tools to get more done. And again, to outsource, delegate ultimately to people. And lastly, tools help you capture valuable data. And that's something that is also a business asset, as well as something that when looking back at data will help you ideate, will help you innovate, because you'll see things in data that'll say, oh, there's an opportunity that I didn't even think about because you didn't have the data to know about that particular insight. So I think process and tools really can take you to a new level without having to think about people who are skillful and insightful, but they're also expensive and less predictable. So that is the third piece to scaling value deliverable, which is building your talent ecosystem. And I call it a talent ecosystem because I think a lot of businesses get really comfortable, well, if it's not an employee, I can't control it, I don't own it. You can't control it and own it if it's an employee anyway. And I think the COVID environment tells you that. It's just the whole economic system has been upended and lots of people are displaced. So I think it's more important to think about building a talent ecosystem that focuses on the delivery of your value, and that you as a person or your team should keep the customer touching work close to you. That's the high return on investment work that really you should focus on you and your core team doing. And then you should think about everything that's not core, and what's core and not core is going to be different for every single business. There is no, for me, I work in recruiting freelancers. Recruiting is core to my business, but it's not core to Terri's business. So you have to think about what's core, not core, depending in the context of your business. But whatever is not core, think hard about how you can delegate that to process, tools, or ultimately to people. And it's really in that order to get the best value and to get the best execution, from the people that you might ultimately hire or partner with.
And because we outsource a lot of things, I can give a couple of examples. So, and the one thing that's interesting is the process is different when you're outsourcing it to someone versus having an employee, whether they're virtual or not. That's a very important piece. And then tools, the insight that you're going to capture for those tools, and adding tools right now would be a really smart thing to do. But you can just go through your business and basically say what's a non-core activity. Maybe you want to get more demand for your business, but you don't really want to do work on social media. Well, that would be something you could outsource. Accounting functions you could outsource. We outsource business development. We outsource PR for our PR company. And when we do that, we have to say, look, our business process is going to be different now that this is an outsourced function. Our tool set needs to be different. And then, partnering with somebody like ResultsResourcing to find the best people.
And, I want to really sing the praises of outsourcing to freelancers. First of all, there's been a long-standing trend that more and more people are freelancing versus getting employed. In fact, before COVID, there was a study done that showed that by 2027, there were going to be more freelancers in the United States. 52% of people would be freelancing as opposed to being full-time employees. So there's a huge trend, and I think that's going to be accelerated because of COVID. Because just like in the financial crisis around 2008, a lot of people became necessity entrepreneurs, or they became people that were disillusioned with firms that they felt loyalty towards, but the firm wasn't loyal back. And it's not even a matter of loyalty. Sometimes business reality just says we can't afford to keep people on. And so I think a lot of people have started to think about a side hustle or being a freelancer, but I think freelancers are really a very flexible resource for many businesses, in particular for those non-core activity. And freelancers are great because they're available, they're flexible, and they're skilled. And so these are really the little list on the left there, the reasons I think freelancers can be a really powerful enabling resource when you choose to invest in people, because they help you scale up or down. You don't have employment contracts and things like that. You can basically contract for the work that you need done and no more or less, but they can become extremely valuable team members because great freelancers want to be part of a team and they want a long-standing relationship, not a once and done gig. As we've been talking, it's a great way to offload non-core work. You can add high caliber skill that doesn't need to be trained. They're going to come to the table with the skills that you need in process, in tools, your industry, whatever it might be. They might have done, one idea is trying out ideas using freelancers before you go full time with employees. Many freelancers work in a lot of different industries. They may have tried something similar. So you're going to get experience so you can avoid bumps in the road because you're using somebody that's experienced trying something. Many freelancers in our focus as results resourcing has always been on the professional freelancers, but many of them are business owners. And so they know what a P&L is. They know what they need to do to achieve recurring revenue by performing well. They don't have a paycheck mentality. And so I think you can really bring on some great talent that's going to understand what it's like to be a business owner. And they'll be able to enhance your business because they're self-starters, they're motivated, and they're focused on adding value. And probably the last thing is really it's a way to optimize finite capital. No business has too much capital right now. And so really thinking about what's core to your business and you and your core team focusing on that and thinking about, well, this other stuff still needs to get done, but you can get it done in a great way with really skilled talent. It optimizes the use of finite capital to still get what you need done, but without having to make, big investments in staff that, might change. Your needs might change in 3 months because we really have a hard time predicting the future. So staff flexibility is important.
And that's a great segue to how do you plan for an uncertain future. And for that, I want to go back to this model that Elizabeth and I were talking through. So we want to go to this a little deeper because this is truly something that both of us use on a regular basis. We operate very differently, we think very differently, but we're very methodical, and this has helped both of us make these innovations, these small pivots. So let's talk first about taking stock. So Elizabeth, what do you do when you take stock? I already talked about every day I start with that question, who am I called to serve and what do they need from me right now? But how do you think the folks that are tuning in and the ones that will listen to this rebroadcast, how do you think that they can use some of the things we talked about today to take stock?
Well, first of all, just calling back attention to the 10 ways of innovation and tactics. I mean, it's a great tool to use to just run through the list to help you start taking stock, of your business, and always thinking in terms of process, tools, and people. Personally, I don't do this every single day, but I do it once a week. And I basically spend time, a good hour, going back to the basics, back to what's my purpose, who do I want to serve, and what are the things that came up this week that are cropping up consistently, or are problems, and maybe I need to rethink them so they're opportunities, not problems. And so I think Terri and I follow a very similar methodology. Maybe our timing's different, our tools are different, but ultimately you really need to get in the habit, or I highly recommend you get into the habit, because the more you do that, the more you question, the more you're going to start thinking, oh, well, what if? Maybe I could do that a different way, or thinking about a conversation that you had with somebody. So I think whatever helps you take stock in these tools that are in the wheel of innovation, I think is a great starting point for everybody.
Yeah, and I think the key is knowing yourself. I know that starting my day with just that connection back to why I'm on this earth and who I'm called to serve, like that's what really motivates me. But I think what we both share is it's scheduled time that we focus on that taking stock. It's not something you do between meetings or at the end of the day. Like it's scheduled time that's dedicated to taking stock. Is that something you would agree with, Elizabeth, before we talk about asking for feedback?
Totally. It's scheduled on my calendar. And I've actually have a couple of times during the week that I schedule it. I don't always do it. Sometimes I move it to the next day if something comes up. But it is scheduled, and I hold myself accountable to do it. Because I really feel at the end of the day, I've shortchanged my business and my clients if I haven't thought about how can I innovate and be better.
Exactly. And I think that's a good segue to the second one, but I don't want to leave the first one without reminding you not to judge. The hardest part about being an entrepreneur, I believe, second only to being a parent, which I am not capable of doing. I can't even raise my dog. I think second only to being a parent, being an entrepreneur is the toughest thing that you can do. And so take it easy on yourself. When Maya Angelou said, when you know better, you do better. And my mantra in life is I'm going to earn from my mistakes, not just learn from my mistakes. And every mistake that I make, I'm just going to find a way to earn from it. And if you can just take that pressure off of yourself, it makes it easier to then go from taking stock to asking for feedback. So Elizabeth, you're really good at this. What are some of the strategies that you deploy for asking for feedback?
Well, as I was saying earlier, I find ways to engage with my customers. And because I'm a tech entrepreneur, I'm a big believer in what they call agile development, which is just constantly iterating. And especially because I bootstrap my own technology platform, I was constantly looking for ways to get feedback that that I could have on my term. And so I engage with my customers. I mean, I experiment on Terri all the time. If I want to try something new, I'll say, okay, Terri, I'm going to do this. Would you mind if I used your job on our platform to experiment with this? And, it's like you all develop relationships with customers, or in our case, freelancers, that we can ask, would you help? And frankly, most of our customers and most of our freelancers like being asked. They have ideas and they see my business from a different perspective than I do. And so I just think that's to get over or find ways to ask for help and ask for feedback. And if you build relationships and you put those requests in terms of here's what you'll get out of it as well, then that even makes people more inclined to want to help and give you that feedback. But the key to me always is that it needs to be a cycle of continuous improvement and creating that feedback loop, and that people see that their feedback produced a change that was positive. And so I always make sure I circle back to say, hey, you gave me this idea, here's what I did with it, and here's what happened. And that, that's a really natural thing because people are curious. So those would be some things that I practice, really almost all the time. Some of it out of necessity, being a technology entrepreneur, but also as a business person, I found that it's really a great way to build value and build relationships.
Yeah, and I look at every business that I start as a joint venture with my customers, and I try to find ways through thinking like it's a joint venture. And so when I come up with a new idea for a new business or an add-on to an existing business, I do exactly like Elizabeth said. Who can I partner with to innovate on this idea? So I'm not doing it by myself. I'm building a community around me with innovation. And I just look for people that have a similar motivation that I do in that area and partner with them to basically collaborate on that idea. And typically coming out of that is where you're going to find the greatest opportunity to innovate, which is in processes. And I know, Elizabeth, this is like your bailiwick. So what do you recommend in this area?
Well, it's funny, but I think people have this notion that, processes for bureaucrats and, big corporations, and it's boring and uninteresting. And I guess that's one of these things. I mean, I design systems for a living, and I have a team that helps me code them and bring them to life through the results resourcing platform. So anything to do with technology, process is really important, or, the customer experience wouldn't be good and it wouldn't be consistent. But it's kind of like the wheel of innovation. Think about process in small little steps. I mean, most of us want to do something in social media, for example, to promote what we do. You know, a process could be simply 5 steps of how you go ask your audience, what would they like to hear about from you? And it might be a simple 3 or 5 step, that's a process. And having a consistent process about something so tiny and little, you know, is just the starting point. And then, you know, as you go through that wheel, you'll start to write down processes for all kinds of little things. You know, how you work with your accountant, you know, how you collect your payments for your business, whatever it might be. You have a process. You just maybe don't know it. You never wrote it down. And it doesn't have to be elaborate, doesn't have to be fancy, but just start a Google Doc, you know, and start categorizing the different processes that you're documenting, because, you know, you might come up, if you just do 1 a week, you know, in 10 weeks, you're going to have 10 processes that you have documented, and you're going to think, it'll help you think differently about your business, where the gaps in your customer experience might be. Process is a business asset, and it helps you scale. So those are some of the things I think about. Process excites me. You know, it's a new way of thinking about how I do business every single day.
And before we talk about tools, I want to segue off of that. When I first heard that advice as an entrepreneur a couple of decades ago, I thought, oh, like corporations, we're going to build this big process wheel and document. It's really not that. It's everything from drawing the flow of how your customer pays and trying to streamline that, or, you know, developing a checklist of the high value touch points in, you know, how you serve a customer. You know, I have multiple services businesses, and we've developed these little checklists that make it easy for our team to make sure they don't forget anything, but they're not these big, lengthy process documents that I had when I was an executive inside a corporation. They're really these very nimble tools that help you stay focused on those touch points or those things that are really important to make sure you don't forget. And I love how Elizabeth goes from process to tools, because frequently when we review some of those processes, invariably we will find ways that we could add technology to make something more efficient or more effective. So Elizabeth, you want to touch on that one?
Yeah, I just think that, you know, I think a lot of us, you know, read a lot of the email marketing campaigns that we're all subjected to, you know, about this CRM system or this new, you know, drip mail campaign tool and things like that. And I think they promise, you know, how they're going to simplify your life and make you more effective. But, you know, if you don't make decisions about tools in the context of the value you offer your client, how they want to receive information, and the processes that you have in place that, you know, really characterize how you deliver value every single day, you're probably going to end up, you know, adjusting how you do business to fit the tool. And that's really not how it ought to work. The tools should serve you. And, you know, so I think that you'll also make better decisions about whether you buy up, you know, in terms of the base tool or, you know, some of the additional features that they might have. But I just think that the key is thinking about how you do business, how you deliver value to the client, and thinking about outsourcing your time and effort to process, then to tools that fit your process. And I think at the end of the day, you know, you're going to end up with more time on your hands because things are going to be done consistently and better, and probably for less money, and still deliver quality value to your clients. And that really, I love that. And thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's actually a question on that I want to ask that came in on the question box, and that is, so I know you're going to tie this point to it, but I wanted to ask this so that people know that we're going to start taking questions in a minute. But the question is kind of a burning question. How do I decide what should be outsourced versus what should be delegated to somebody on the team?
Well, like I said before, I think that's going to depend on what your business is. Like I was saying, recruiting to Terri should be outsourced. Recruiting for Elizabeth should not. Although I actually do outsource some of our talent curation pieces that aren't key to how we do our business. So I think that that's something that should be constantly examined. And again, the thrust of this conversation is small pivots. So don't feel like you have to answer every question all at once. Make small pivots. Make a decision that I'm going to pick one thing that I don't think is essential to what I do to deliver value, and that's what I'm going to start thinking about, how I develop a process, pick a tool, or outsource to a freelancer or to somebody on my staff. And just start there. Just start experimenting, with that whole notion. But it's basically thinking about your time, and everything you do yourself, there's an opportunity cost. You're spending your time, if your time is worth $100 an hour and you just decided to go research a tool, then and spend an hour doing it, you just spent an hour, $100 researching that tool. And so I think it's thinking about, is that really where I want to spend my time? Does that really touch a customer? Does that really add lasting value that the customer appreciates? Those are the things. It's probably going to be easier for you to think about the things that do add value. And then if something's not on that list, then you should be thinking about, how do I outsource it to process, tools, or people?
And as we move to questions, there was a kind of a springboard question. How do you know if the process is good or it needs to be innovative, modified, or changed?
Basically, you're going to know if it works, if it works smoothly, or all of a sudden it screeches to a halt because there was a gap in the process. Or all of a sudden, a client writes you and say, I got this email that I don't understand. You're going to get feedback right away, which is why I like to have a relationship with my stakeholders, that they don't look at it as like, oh, something bad just happened. They just come back to me and said, hey, I don't understand this. Help me why was this was confusing or whatever. And then I go, oh, thanks. Obviously something I need to go work on. So if you establish feedback, you're going to learn. And then just yourself, all of a sudden, if you follow all these steps and then there's a gap in the process, you're going to know you missed something and you need to innovate yet one more little step, to fill that gap. So the feedback is really key. And also measuring the amount of time you spend on things, frankly, that you don't like to do or that's non-core. Think about how you're spending your time. If it's on stuff you don't like to do or you're not good at, then probably you need to innovate in that area or innovate more. That's
a great point. And we do have time for just a couple more questions. I'm going to take the next one, which came as a direct chat to me. It's kind of right up my alley. What if my customers aren't buying services from me or my company? And how do you get yourself back in the game? So I've had that happen to me numerous times. I'm way older than I look, and I've been through multiple major crashes, and our company was decimated with a hurricane in South Florida in 2000, or when was that, 1992, with Hurricane Andrew. And I was the leader of that office, and our company was decimated, and most of the schools that we served were decimated. And so we had to, pick up the pieces and start over. And I learned this unconsciously at first, and then over time I learned it consciously. I used to seek the answer outside myself. I'm going to ask, our president, because I was the head of that division. I was going to ask our president and let him give me the answer. I'm going to ask, the controller and head of finance, what do you think? And I would always search for answers outside of myself. But over the course of the last 20 years, I've begun to realize that there's a part of me that always knows the answer. And so I developed, that's part of why I do that daily process. Who am I called to serve and what do they need from me right now? Because my best ideas around how I can grow and restart growth in a particular company, because I've got multiple companies in our portfolio, those ideas came from just that simple question of this kind of possibility thinking. Who am I called to serve? What do they need from me right now? And I just start asking that question. And what I've found is that the answers to how we can get back to growing are actually inside of us. If we'll just slow down, stop the monkey brain, and get focused on who we're called to serve and what do they need from me right now, and let those ideas come from that place of possibility, that's how you'll get back to growing. It's not going to be some marketing methodology or funnel science that you're going to implement. In fact, those things right now are going to be very incongruent with how buyers buy. It's really going to be that just listening, slowing down and listening, and just getting into that state of possibility and that state of service. That's where your idea is going to come from. Elizabeth, you have anything that you want to add to that?
Yeah, I would just add one quick thing, and that is that, you can't make people buy whatever it is you're offering. You really need to position yourself to meet their needs, and that means you need to be in touch with that feedback loop of what people are looking for. And it's really about adding, I focus on just trying to add value. When someone's ready to hire a freelancer, hopefully they're going to think of me and that I'm going to do a great job for them. But I can't push them to hire a freelancer. That'd be a disaster because they're not probably ready from a process, tools, or leadership position. So I think just thinking less about getting the client and more about delivering value is how I keep saying every day, because I'm just like every single one of us on the call. My business has been just as impacted as all of yours. And I know that my clients don't know what their clients are going to need. So there's a great deal of uncertainty. And so I just focus on being there, being helpful. So when people are ready to make a buying decision and it involves a quality freelancer, that they think of me.
I love that. And as we wrap up, we want to thank everybody for joining us. And we want to make sure you know how to connect with us. Please connect with us on LinkedIn. Both of us are very active as thought leaders on LinkedIn. And on behalf of ShiftCo, which is our newest concept, you can attend any of our free events. We've got lots of training on there for free, shiftco.global. And Elizabeth, I hope they take advantage of this business innovation consult, because in a few minutes, you can give people some great specific tips for their specific business.
Yeah, we just thought that we would offer this opportunity for a 30-minute call, if you wanted to talk a little bit further about some of the concepts that we've introduced today with the innovation wheel, and really, how does one think more specifically about outsourcing to process tools and people. We wanted to offer the opportunity to chat further.
Awesome. Elizabeth, thank you so much for doing this with me and sharing your wisdom. You truly are, just a bad mama dama and, a tech entrepreneur and just a guru, a business guru, and truly somebody I love being around. For those of you that joined us, thank you so much. We'll send out a recording of this. We'll also send the slides so that you can get some of those little tips and tricks that we offered. And again, thanks so much for joining us. Elizabeth, any closing thoughts?
Just that Terri is just as amazing. So we have a mutual admiration society going here. So thank you so much. Appreciate you hosting
this. You got it. You got it. Thanks, everybody. And just know that 2021, now's the opportunity to innovate. You can do this. And there's nothing but good that's going to come out on the other side. So thanks so much. We'll talk to you later.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.